Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Paul Bloomberg. I'm an author and the founder of the Core Collaborative Learning Network. Our mission globally is to expand student ownership and agency by focusing on collaborative inquiry. I am also the author of 2 books, Leading Impact Teams, Building a Culture of Efficacy, that I wrote with my friend Barb Pitchford. John Hattie wrote the foreword. And I've also written a book with a bunch of friends of mine. Barb and Kara were leading the pack, and then there's 13 other authors. And this book is really devoted to the power of self and peer assessment, and it gives you the practical application on how to do that. We're in the midst of revising it for remote teaching and learning, but a lot of the ideas in that book transfer easily to remote learning. And we're going to learn a little bit about that today during this session. I wanted to just give you an example from a new product that we are publishing in November called the Empowered Learner Toolkit. And we met with about 150 teachers and parents and kids over the summer. And we just wanted to find out what were the problems of practice that they were going through with remote teaching and learning. And one of them was clarity. The kids sometimes didn't have clarity. Their parents and caregivers didn't have clarity, and the expectations just weren't really clear. And so we designed our formative tests with clarity in mind. Another thing that we found from our teachers is that they just didn't have the kind of planning time that they needed to create really high quality formative tasks. So we decided that we would create them for them. So there's a lot of problems that we tried to solve in developing this toolkit. So this is a formative task that we're going to explore together from our Empowered Learner Toolkit. This is a grade 3 task. It's around story mapping, but why I picked it is I think that anybody can identify this with this. So there's about 10 to 15 tasks that align to a cluster of priority or focus standards. This particular toolkit focuses on standard 1, literal and inferential comprehension, standard 2, recounting and theme, and standard 3, which really digs into character analysis and the story elements. So with that, I'm going to just kind of give you a drive-by on what these formative tasks are. I'm using Nearpod. We are selling this with a Nearpod integration or Pear Deck. It could be PowerPoint slides or Google Slides. Today, we're using Nearpod with Google Slides, and I want to show you some of the features that are already built into the tasks if you choose to purchase this. The cool thing about this is you'll have this model. You can create these on your own. I created this one, so it is very easy. I was not a techie person, and I've used Nearpod. I'm 50, and I figured it out. And so I thought by just giving you a model of the different sections of a formative task, this is something that you can replicate on your own. So the first thing that we do in all of our formative tasks is we do a quick check-in on how our kids are feeling. One thing we want to know our impact on is how are our kids feeling? And, and are they going through something that we need to know about so we can target a response to them? So in this particular example, I just used the poll feature from Nearpod, and then there's a bunch of different responses. They could select one or more answers on here. From I'm in a good space and I can focus, something is bothering me, I'm having a hard time managing my emotions, I'm hungry, I'm having a hard time focusing, I feel alone, I need a friend, I just don't feel good today. And so this is a great way to capture some data, and then you would look at and analyze that data to decide what your response might be. And we have found that these questions have served us really well. We have found that a lot of our kids are just hungry, especially our kids that are just learning remotely. And so it gives us a lot of information that is really important to support the social and emotional well-being of our kids. So we typically start with a quick SEL check-in, and then we move to a section around being goal-directed. And you can add audio via Nearpod or Pear Deck to any of these slides, so it just doesn't have to be them reading, and we really suggest that you do that. In this particular slide, it lays out what the learning target is. And keep in mind that the learning target is decontextualized, meaning the assessment product isn't a part of the target. The target lives alone. It's basically the standard, right? We are learning to identify and describe the most important parts of the story. Now, the task or the product is a story map. In this particular example, you could scale this down to even K1 kids through a read aloud. Then, to achieve clarity, which more than doubles the speed of learning for your kids, is they need to really start to think about why they're learning this. So what we've done is we've laid out an essential question or a series of questions that align to each task. And this one, what are the most important parts of the story? This also helps them to activate their schema before they start. It says on the next slide, they could write or talk about their response. And then I added a little, I know you can do it. And then in Nearpod, we use the open-ended question feature. And the question is there up at the top. What are the most important parts of the story? They can write their answer or they could record audio. And so we don't really care. We just want kids to respond. And we know after they go through their this task, their thinking might even change. And then they could submit their answer below. Now, the next piece is all around clarity. Now, keep in mind, if you could imagine the week before kids had this task asynchronously, during synchronous instruction, we would teach them how to do the task. We could also teach them how to do the task in face-to-face instruction. So if you have a hybrid model going on, you could use your hybrid time to teach the task. And then the next week, you could have the task be asynchronous. So this today is an example of an asynchronous task. So in this next section, it's telling them on the next slide, they're going to be able to explore an exemplar. And it's asking them to highlight the success criteria on the example. And so right here, you can see we've used the draw feature of Nearpod, and it gives the directions on the top, highlight the success criteria on the example using the highlighting tool. So you can make those directions disappear. And then we can go to the highlighting tool and we can look for just the character criteria. I have to list the characters and the main character has to go on the top of the list. And so then I can check right here. Oh, yep, the main character is at the top of the list. And then they could choose different colors to annotate the exemplar. Oop, that didn't even work, did it? To annotate the exemplar with a different highlighter color for each group of success criteria. And keep in mind, we have to teach kids how to do this during our synchronous or face-to-face time. But in an asynchronous setting, this just helps to reinforce the success criteria. So for every single formative task that we've designed, it also comes with an exemplar based on one mentor text. We use the same mentor text for all 10 to 15 tasks that we've designed. So next up in the toolkit is a chance for kids to explore and practice. In this particular example, kids are choosing their own text. And we really wanted kids to have a lot of choice and voice because it increases motivation. It also supports efficacy, right? And so in this particular example, kids can read any story they want on their own. It has to be independent. And then they take it for a spin by themselves. And in this example, we also use the draw tool. And so you can see right here, they have to add a text box to each box on the organizer to complete the story map. So I'm just going to do a quick demonstration. Right here is a text box. They can shrink it. And by the way, kids really love this. They can shrink the text box to fit. And then they can type their response. Mom, Dad, you get the picture. You can, make the font smaller or bigger to fit in, and that they would just set up a text box for each different section of the story map and then submit it. Keep in mind here, we have the success criteria on the side to guide them while they're doing their work. and then they submit their response down here. Now, we're not done yet, because if you remember from my introduction, our learning network is all about empowering kids to take ownership of their learning. And that means that they have to become a lot more self-aware. And so we do that through self-assessment. And so for every formative task that we've designed, there is also a companion stoplight rubric. And here are the directions. Put an X on the stoplight rubric to self-assess. Be honest with yourself. I can help you if I know what you are struggling with. They can make those directions disappear. And then right here, they could use different features. They could just use an X to let us know where they're at. They could use the text box feature. It really doesn't matter. But what this does is it populates the teacher dashboard with perception data. And perception data to us is just as important as actually achievement data or the formative data from the story map. Knowing how kids think about how they did with their learning is really important. Most kids grade themselves lower, believe it or not. We do have some kids that grade themselves higher, but typically they don't know the success criteria we found. So typically it's a symptom that they don't really know what the expectations are. You do have some kids that stretch the truth a bit, but not many, we found. So this gives kids an opportunity to reflect on their learning and use a simple stoplight rubric. All of our slide decks are customizable, so you can change them really easy as a teacher. Now, we're kind of ending with a signature practice from the Castle playbook. And so we wanted to integrate those signature practices into our formative tasks. And so this is from one of the optimistic closure activities. So thinking about what you learned today, what is one takeaway you want to try and why? A takeaway can be an idea, a strategy, a tool, or an action step. And so this really gets to the action. And so kids can either write their answer or they can record audio. It really doesn't matter, but we want them to take some action after they do the task. They might decide that they want to repeat the same task with another favorite text. They might decide that, wow, I really struggle with the problem, so I really want to focus on the problem. So it really doesn't matter, but we want them to take some sort of action as a result of the deliberate practice that they just engaged in. And remember, deliberate practice is different than mindless practice. We want our kids engaging in deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is goal-directed. They have a goal in mind before they start. And then deliberate practice also integrates self-assessment and reflection. So if we want to develop expertise in our learners, we want them to engage in a lot of deliberate practice. So this is from Castle. I just wanted to make sure that I gave tribute to Castle. It's a great organization. By the way, the proceeds from Peer Power, the royalties go directly to Castle. So we are going to end with a little wrap up with some key takeaways. The number one thing, students need to feel safe if we want to strengthen their efficacy. So starting with, SEL check-ins like you're seeing to get some data around how kids are feeling is really important to support their safety. To build self-efficacy, kids have to engage in some struggle and even some failure. Kids need to set ambitious goals that they might not have set, but the more ambitious goal that they set, the higher chance that we have of strengthening their efficacy if they achieve it. We also discuss clarity, how important clarity is, clarity of the expectations, not only for the kids, but also for the parents and the families and the caregivers at home, because they're now doing a lot of coaching of learning with their own kids. Co-construction of success criteria is super important for learner ownership. So what I would do is maybe do the co-construction during live teaching, whether it be face-to-face or synchronous live instruction on Google Meet or Zoom. And then we also want to reinforce the success criteria with an asynchronous task like the one that I showed you today. I'm using Google Slides and Nearpod. And then the last thing that I think is really an important takeaway is we don't want to stop on our mission in developing assessment capable learners. We want our kids to know where they're going, where they're at, and what their next learning step is. And that's in any setting. We just have to kind of rethink it a little bit. So you saw a stoplight rubric, which is a great tool that you can use. We have created those for our toolkit that we will be selling. If I can do it at 50, you can.